presented to me yesterday, pointing something out that was like so obvious I didn't even notice it. I'm surprised I didn't notice it. But new laws have been passed saying that the United States is going to pay for all of, paying for Israeli soldiers' medical and retirement and all that shit, right? But if Israelis are all required to serve in the military at 18, doesn't that mean then we then pay for all of their retire? Like this is a way that they've figured out to justify the free lives we provide them. And that's fascinating. It's funny nobody's talking about it. It's funny it came from Algo of all places. But, you never know where you're going to get something. So, magic bullets. Before I get into it, I'm going to preface this by saying I use Wikipedia for my information. And there's a reason specifically why I use Wikipedia for my information. Outside of, it's the number one source of information in the world. I'm about to show you the reason. You're about to see, at the time, future Prime Minister, in 2010 when this was recorded, future Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Currently, he's former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Talking to the IsraelNationalNews.com. And this is a high-ranking Mossad officer, high-ranking Israeli agent. So him saying this it's as smoking gun as it gets. Oh, you got a new bike. Nice bike. No? So here's a video, pun intended, smoking gun proof.
Moetzet Yesh, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged instruction day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the number one source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
I came here to learn.
Okay? So the reason I use Wikipedia is because I want to use the narrative that Israel wants us to know. So when it all points back to Israel, you can't say, oh, well, this is some sort of biased opinion against Israel or some kind of stupid shit like that. So this is the single bullet theory, the magic bullet theory. Really, the only reason I talk about this is to point to you, to show you just how arrogant you are. Right? Because at the end of the day, you believe that you have the magic bullet ability to hear news stories, to be given a historical narrative, and you can decipher what's true and what isn't. Because all of you, not one of you believe the single bullet magic bullet theory. Not one of you. All of you believe that the narrative presented to us by the government as the explanation for the assassination of a fucking president is a lie. You acknowledge that, right? What are you talking about? Nope, that's why I'm asking for your thought. Well, that's all that came through. So I have no idea what you're talking about. That's the first comment I can see. So we're going to backtrack a little bit from the last video, and we're going to talk about what we're supposed to believe, what all of us flat out call a lie. And you know, at the same time, it's the same people telling you the earth is round. It's the same time, at the same time, it's the same people telling you Israel is the good guy. Like I said, it's they've put it right in our faces. I gotta tell my wife this one actually, because she's not gonna believe the source. She'd be like, "Holy shit, he said that." So check this out. I'll go actually open my eyes to it, but you know the law that just passed about the U.S. paying for Israeli soldiers' health care and all that? Well, if they're all required to serve at 18, doesn't that mean they're all essentially soldiers? Doesn't that mean we pay for all of their health care?
Well, it's only males, right?
Huh?
Only males that are not.
No.
That are able to serve.
No. Well, yeah, but no. Females serve too. Females serve too.
But do they
Wonder
have
Woman
to?
was an Israeli sniper killing children.
So then it's just the ones
But
that are fit enough to pass.
Whatever it is, they're all required to serve, meaning we pay for all of their health care. We pay for all of their retirement. It's a funny way for them to have put it in our faces without us realizing it. All right. Can I ask for Americans' opinion? Most Americans are too weak to give me their thoughts. Why the fuck don't you ask your question? I wonder why U.S. loves guns for self-protection, but shoots schools, not ICE agents. That's not like a question. That's not an that's not an answerable question. Why does the United States love guns for self-protection, but shoot schools, not ICE agents, etc., etc.? What does that even mean? You're going to have to word your question a little bit better. That's the plan to make America the world's piggy bank, and will be the largest human trafficking country on the planet. I think we already are. I'm pretty sure we already are. And the idea of countries and all, these are ideas for us. These are ideas to manipulate the goyim, to manipulate us into thinking there's choice, governance, all that. There's no real countries. Are you kidding me? The North American Free Trade Agreement showed you that, NAFTA. That all of North America is an entity. And that was a long time ago. We need to start understanding this is a one world situation. One world government, one world system. Yes, it is. You tampon, get your missus, yeah. So because you can't, okay, so this is what you're saying. I wondered why USA loves guns for self-protection, but shoot schools, not ICE agents, etc., etc. What the fuck does that even mean? Like, how am I supposed to answer such a stupid, broad question? This is somebody trying to sound smart, but not. I think Trump has taken some stupid decisions in the recent time businesses low. Trump is done nothing but stupid shit. You should have some mental. We have guns. For some reason, it was written into the Constitution, and maybe this was like, I mean, I don't even know. I definitely don't believe in 1776 and all that other bullshit that they tell us. But the reason we have guns is to protect ourselves from tyrannical government. That it's not about protecting yourself from, the average bad guy. We are allowed to have guns because our military has guns, and we are theoretically, we're supposed to be able to rise up and defend ourselves against a government that functions the way ours does currently. When is someone going to show people another way to live so they can feel secure about leaving this one? I mean, that's what, we all know that. That's like inherent, right? If anything, the scenario, the system we live in is what teaches us to live in this psychopathy. But, you don't have to be told not to kill people. At the same time, you have to be told not to kill pedos. Right? We all agree that pedos, rapists, should be killed. And yet the system that supposedly represents us doesn't think that way. And granted, like, one of the things we're up against is a system that has been engineered to go against itself. So, like, what's happened to the black community, for the last few decades, engineering the thug persona, engineering it's just embarrassing. You see these idiots, tattoos all over their face. They sound like they can barely speak. They're role models to your children, and they're just fucking idiots. And it's up to you whether you point that out to your children in a reasonable way. Like, seriously, you think this guy is cool? Like, my kids already, they've been programmed a long time ago that face tattoos are fucking stupid. You should not have a face tattoo. Unless you're a tattoo artist. Or you're a fighter. Or something. I don't even know. But to disqualify yourself from any reasonable job immediately because you're dumb enough to have a face tattoo, that's a lot. You let agents push you around breaking laws. Yeah. So are you saying the citizens should be shooting the agents? Like, this is the kind of person that's actually dangerous. Trying to incite people into doing what they want, right? They want us to respond with violence. They want us to do something stupid so they can institute martial law. That would be the best thing to happen. Look what they did over a sub sandwich. We have the, good morning, Attorney General getting mad over a sub sandwich, but the Epstein shit is still just, we don't know what to do here. We just don't know. Because our forefathers understood that it would take violence for us to get rid of tyrannical government. Even regime has taken violence. Every regime has taken violence. Well, the reality is it's not, it requires unity more than anything. you know, the best thing that could happen is that, you know, 90% of what they expect to show up to vote don't show up. And a very, very small percentage of us, 1 to 2% of us who are still like, you know, steadfast, show up. That would be more telling than most things. But it really just comes down to we have to unify and eliminate, we have to identify what the problems are. And the biggest problem facing everyone is arrogance. Anyway, I have to skip this conversation because we're supposed to be talking about the single bullet theory. So, the single bullet theory, also known as the magic bullet theory, was introduced by the Warren Commission in its investigations of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy to explain what happened to the bullet that struck Kennedy in the back and exited through his throat. Given the lack of damage to the presidential limousine consistent with having it been struck by a high-velocity bullet, and the fact that Texas Governor John Connally was wounded and was seated on a jumper seat 1.5 feet in front of and slightly to the left of the president, the commission concluded they were likely struck by the same bullet. This bullet. This magical bullet that's in pristine condition after doing everything it's said to have done. Generally credited to the Warren Commission staffer Arlen Specter, who is Jewish, U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, this theory posits that the single bullet known as Warren Commission Exhibit 399 or CE 399 caused all the wounds to the governor and non-fatal wounds to the president, which totals up to 7 entry-exit wounds in both men. One bullet did 7 entry and exit wounds. The theory says that a 3-centimeter long copper-jacketed lead core rifle bullet from a model 9138 Carcano rifle fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Depository passed through President Kennedy's neck into Governor Connally's chest somehow, went through his wrist, and embedded itself in Connally's left thigh. If so, this bullet traversed a back brace, 15 layers of clothing, 7 layers of skin, and approximately 15 inches of muscle tissue, and pulverized 4 inches of Connally's rib, and shattered his radius bone. The bullet was found on a gurney in the corridor at Parkland Memorial Hospital after the assassination. The Warren Commission found that this gurney was the one that had carried Governor Connally, but it wasn't. It was the bullet. It was the gurney that had the president. In its final conclusion, the Warren Commission found persuasive evidence from experts that a single bullet caused President Kennedy's throat wound and all of the wounds found in Governor Connally. It acknowledged that there was a, quote, difference of opinion among the members of the commission, quote, as to the probability, but stated that the theory was not essential to its conclusions and that all members had no doubt that all shots were fired from the 6th floor window of the depository building. Most critics believe that the single bullet theory is essential to the Warren Commission's conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The reason for this is the timing. If, as the Warren Commission found, President Kennedy was wounded sometime between frames 210 and 225 of the edited Zapruder film, Governor Connally was wounded in the back chest no later than frame 2. Not have been time enough between of the two men for Oswald to have fired 2 shots from his bolt-action rifle. FBI marksman who test-fired the rifle for the Warren Commission concluded that the minimum time for getting off two successive well-aimed shots on the rifle is approximately 2.25 seconds, or 41 to 42 Zapruder frames. That's fucking crazy. First of all, these are top FBI marksmen. And still, I've never seen any sort of footage that proves that it's capable. I mean, we're talking about a single action bolt rifle, meaning you line up the shot, boom, pull it down, pull the fucking bullet back down, let it cock back up, re-aim and refire all in 2.25 seconds. 1, 2. 1, 2. Like that would be insane. And it's not just to fire off 2 accurate shots. It's to fire off 2 accurate shots at a moving target. A significant distance away. But they're saying 2.4 seconds, 2.25 seconds, 41 to 42 frames of the video. Yet, Kennedy was stuck between 210 and 225, and Conley was wounded in no later than 240. So that's between 15, or that's between 15 and 30 frames. It's scientifically impossible. That's what it's literally telling you, and that's why you as an American, you don't believe it. Look, right angle, straight lines, right angles, all a whole bunch of squares. Square right here, square around it, square right here, all squares. Don't look at that. The United States House Select Committee on Assassinations published a report in 1979 stating the forensic pathology panel's conclusions were consistent with the so-called single bullet theory advanced by the Warren Commission. The first preliminary report on the assassination issued by the FBI on December 9, 1963 said 3 shots rang out, 2 bullets struck President Kennedy, and 1 wounded Governor Connally. That's fucking silly. I love the people that love their God so much they won't even type the word. Talk about a dumbass. Talk about a fucking dumbass. Christians are so stupid. It is so, like, it's shocking that people can honestly survive and be that stupid. How do you get dressed in the morning? How do you tie your shoes and shit? Is that why Skechers made slip-ins? People like you, because I mean, you're the type that I honestly, walking and chewing gum kind of stereotype. How can you be so stupid? No, I'm not even my God's chosen favorite people. No. No, a completely different group is. Who hates us? Who thinks Jesus is burning in a vat of semen? Yeah, they're the boss. But the good news is, as long as I follow their rules and don't question them and don't call out the pedophile being caught in Las Vegas and then allowed to go back to Israel, and don't call out the genocide, I just be a good goyim. When I die, when I'm dead, that's when the party starts. Woo! Woo! Do you realize how fucking stupid that is? You're to put no other God before your God, but you are to put this other religion above you. You're not even your own God's chosen people. What does that tell you? Three shots on Tuesday. After the report was written, the FBI received the official autopsy report, which indicated that the bullet that struck the president in the back had exited through his throat. The FBI had written its report partially based on an initial autopsy report, written by its agents, which reflected the earlier presumption that bullet had only penetrated several inches into the president's back and had likely fallen out. What? The FBI concluded, therefore, that the governor had been struck by a separate bullet. It had fallen out? That's not how that works. The Warren Commission commenced a study of the Zapruder film, the only known film to capture the entire assassination sequence. It's edited. Once you realize that there's even one small edit in the Zapruder film, the whole thing is bullshit. On January 27, 1964, by then the FBI had determined that the running speed of Abraham Zapruder camera was 18.3 frames per second, and that the Carcano rifle found at the Texas School Book Depository, the presumed murder weapon, could not be accurately fired twice under 2.3 seconds or 42 frames of the Zapruder film. When the commission requested and received after February 25 higher resolution images of the Zapruder film from Life magazine, who had purchased the film from Zapruder, it was immediately apparent that there was a timing problem with the FBI's conclusion that 3 bullets had found their mark. Kennedy was observed by the commission to be waving to the crowd at frame 205 of the Zapruder film as he disappears behind the Stemmons Freeway sign, that's where the edit takes place, and seems to be reacting to the shot as he emerges from behind the sign. A little more than a second later at frames 225 and 226. In their initial viewing of the film, Connolly seemed to be reacting to being struck between frames 235 and 240. So it's even less time. It's between 10 and 15 frames. Given the earliest possible frame at which Kennedy could have been struck, frame 205, the minimum 42 frames, 2.3 seconds required between shots, there seemed to be insufficient time for separate bullets to be fired from the rifle. Several assistant counsels, upon viewing the film for the first time, concluded that there had been 2 assassinations, or there had to be 2 assassins. On April 14th and April 21st, 2 conferences were held at the commission to determine when exactly the president and governor were struck. Assistant counsel Melvin Eisenberg wrote in a memorandum dated April 22nd on the first conference that the consensus of those attending was, among other issues, that Kennedy was struck by frames 225, 226, and that the velocity of the first bullet which struck Kennedy would have been little diminished by its passage through the president. Right, because, there's nothing there, there's no spine. It went through his back, which literally, like the top of our back is all just bone and shit, and came out his throat, and it came out like right here. So it just came out that little hole space right there where the tracheotomy goes. Even though the doctors say they put the tracheotomy in, that's where the hole came from. How come the one bullet went through the president and left a little hole, but the other bullet made his head explode? Therefore, if Governor Connolly was in the path of the bullet, it would have struck him and caused the wounds he sustained in his chest cavity. I mean, it's... Can you imagine this group of Jays sitting around looking at this footage going, fuck. It really sucks that this footage exists. I guess, I don't even think... Zapruder is an Israeli agent. So he was there filming it knowingly. Right place, right time. So it's hard to say, but can you imagine, they're sitting there looking at it going, okay, so what can we say? Because obviously, because this is 63, that the technology's new. Color TV is new. It's it just doesn't, why, there's a reason why we don't believe it. It's because it doesn't add up. We're not so stupid that we see Kennedy go boom and his head explode out this way and think, oh, he must have been shot from the back because his head exploded this way. Everybody that was there didn't immediately turn and look at the fucking grassy knoll and then run up on it and all that shit. Because they're all stupid. Everyone interviewed and any witnesses all died, and like it was just crazy. The whole thing is just crazy. Strong indications that this occurred are provided by the facts that if the first bullet did not strike Governor Conley, it would have ripped up the car, but apparently did not. What about the one that hit the fucking street? However, the memorandum stated, given the relatively undamaged condition of the bullet presumed to have done this, CE 399, the consensus was a separate bullet probably struck his wrist and thigh. While not specifying a precise frame for when it was thought Conley was struck by the same bullet which struck Kennedy, the consensus was by Z235, as afterwards his body position would not have allowed his back to be struck the way it was. By the end of April 1964, the commission had its working theory, the single bullet theory, to account for the apparent timing discrepancies found in the Zapruder film and the lack of any damage to the limousine from high-velocity bullet exiting the president's throat. I mean, so apparently, what makes more sense is that this, low-level soldier who wasn't considered an expert marksman did this impossible thing using impossible ammunition that caused impossible damage to happen from one bullet and still remain pristine, is a more viable theory than maybe there was more than one shooter. I mean, this is just stupid. It's fucking stupid. Impact damage was observed in the limousine, but was indicative of lower velocity bullets or bullet fragments. What? For example, a nick on the limousine's chrome was not from a high velocity bullet, as such a bullet would have pierced the chrome, not merely dented it. Oh. Well, I mean, high velocity bullets can just nick the tip of an ear off, right? Although, that's not backed up by the evidence either. On May 24th, the FBI and Secret Service reenacted the shooting in Dallas, and the commission tested its theory. Agents acting as the president and the governor sat in a car approximately the same dimensions of the presidential limousine, which was unavailable for recreation. Interesting. And we only have approximates? Why would we? I mean, we should know that shit. Like, the government should be spending money to prove to the people that this is what their theory is. That doesn't make any sense. When accidents happen, when true accidents happen, when a plane crashes or whatever, they'll dredge the bottom of the ocean and find every little piece they can, take it to a specialized place, a large area where they lay it all out, and then they put the thing back together to figure out exactly what happened. They'll pull shit out of the bottom of the ocean for that. But to prove that the president was killed the way they say, President of the United States was killed the way they say, they're like, dude, we got budget constrictions here. We have a lot of money we still have to give to Israel, you know? Adjustments to measurements were made to account for the differences in the vehicles. That is fucking stupid. Positions were reenacted by matching them to particular frames in the Zapruder film, calibrated with other films and photographs taken that day. Other films? With the agents in position, photographs were taken from the sniper's nest of the Texas School Book Depository. It was from this recreation and the testimony of the agent in the sniper's nest that the commission verified the theory to its satisfaction, as the governor was in a direct line to be struck by any bullet fired between frames 207 and 235 to 240, which exited the president's throat. The agent testified that from... Well, I mean, I know if it's an FBI agent testifying, he's going to tell the truth. He's definitely not going to... He's not a company man who's going to tell the narrative as they want told. Like, whenever somebody comes on here and they're like, dude, I'm a military man. Yeah, as soon as you say you're military, it's like, okay, well, you'll say what you're told to say. You can't think on your own. Right? This is crack, meth, and crocodile all mixed together with some bath salts. The agent testified that from frame 226 onward, the governor was too much towards the front, and his wounds were therefore misaligned from that point. Because a bullet can go through a person just like that, and just no problem, through their back. Where does it go through that it doesn't hit anything? An oak tree partially obscured the line of sight until frame 210. So the commission concluded that the president was not hit until at least frame 210, and that he was probably hit by frame 225. Further evidence gathered suggested that to the commission that the initial April consensus that a separate bullet caused the governor's wrist and thigh injuries was incorrect, as the Army wound ballistics experts concluded that those wounds were, quote, not caused by a pristine bullet. Not caused by a pristine bullet. So, a bullet that would have had to have been pretty fucked up? Is that what they're saying? And therefore, bullet CE, not CE 399, could have caused all his wounds. Experts concluded those were not caused by a pristine bullet, and therefore the pristine bullet could have caused all his wounds. Isn't that your Y-O-U-R? So stupid. Other evidence, such as the nature of Connolly's back wound, was also cited by the commission as corroborating the theory. The commission did not conclude the single bullet theory had been proven, as three members of the body, Representative Hale Boggs, Senator Richard Russell, and John Cooper. Gee, none of those are Coopersteins, Russellbergs, Boggsman, none of that. Thought the theory improbable. Russell requested that his opposition to the theory be stated in a footnote to the report. In the end, the commission changed the word compelling to persuasive and stated, although that it is not necessary to any essential findings of the commission to determine just which shot hit Governor Connolly, it's not necessary to any essential findings? to determine which shot hit the governor? Like that? That's not how investigations work. That's not how this shit works. Don't you think this is strange? As strange as all of the people in the comment section that are what? Now you're mad because I'm talking about this thing? The same people mad every day because I'm talking about we should kill pedos and we should eliminate the J control scheme. Now they're here mad because I'm talking about the Kennedy stuff. Funny how they never have anything to say about what I'm actually saying. It's just more crybaby. Why doesn't he pay attention to me? Why won't this guy pay attention to me? That's literally all that comes out over and over again. Because I'm wrong about everything I'm saying. That's why all this energy and effort goes into me, right? Totally makes sense. And as soon as they're done here, as soon as I'm done here, they're going to go find somebody else that's talking about something similar. And they're going to tell that person, hey, don't you talk about these things. God's chosen people. Exactly. How stupid are you to believe that shit? Especially when you're not one. Oh man, I sure wish I was more like you. You're all chosen. I'm just one of the regular Goyim slaves. Gentile Goyim slaves. Is there anything I can get for you, sir? Can I pay for your fucking pensions? Can I pay for your health care and your education and all that stuff? Please, sir? Although it's not necessary to any essential findings of the commission to determine which shot hit Governor Conley. I just can't, this is, oh no, somebody's, like again, who is going to be begging people to unsubscribe to my page? Why would other people subscribing to my page matter to anyone else? If they're anything other than Israeli, Team Jorge, Act IL, J bots, or Jays, and they're not pedophiles, who is going to be begging you guys to stop paying attention? Don't listen to this guy. Ah. They have nothing better going on in their life but then to come on my feed and not answer any of the questions or debunk anything I'm saying. Just beg other people to unsubscribe. Isn't it funny how that works? Ask yourself that, people. Have you ever seen shit like this before? You watch lots of videos. If you're commenting here, you comment on other shit. You would assume. Have you ever seen anything like this before? When they shut off the comment section, have you ever seen that happen before? Which shot hit Conley? There is very persuasive evidence to indicate that the same bullet which pierced the president's throat also caused Governor Connolly's wounds. What is that very persuasive evidence? Isn't that weird? Nevertheless, all 7 members of the commission signed off on the statement, quote, there was no question in the mind of any member of the commission that all the shots which caused the president's and Governor Connolly's wounds were fired from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. Well, there are multiple windows. They're not saying they all came from the same window. Within minutes after the shot rang out in Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas, Texas, at 12:30 p.m. Exactly 12:30 p.m. is when it happened. That's interesting. on November 22nd, 1963. Sources began reporting that 3 shots had been fired at the president's motorcade. At 12:34 p.m., approximately 4 minutes after the shots were fired, the first wire story flashed around the world. 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade today in downtown Dallas. What sense does that make? That's not how that works. It'd be one thing to say president shot, this, that. 4 minutes after it happened, they're already running with, it was Arab hijackers, and they found a passport. Like, do you not realize how stupid that is? The report had been transmitted by United Press International. Reporter Miriam Smith from the radio telephone located in the front seat of the press car in the presidential motorcade. 6 cars behind the presidential limousine. Really? 4 minutes after the shots, a car 6 cars behind the president is putting out the definitive information right away. They already knew it. Do you understand how silly that is? How irresponsible that is? You don't release information like that about such a sensitive subject without authorization first. Without proper confirmation and authorization. It's crazy. Smith's communication with the Dallas UPI office was made less than a minute after the shots were heard. As his car entered the Stemmons Freeway en route to Dallas's Parkland. Wait a minute. The report was issued 1 minute after the that's an operation. Like, I don't even need to go further. If you think this is how especially technology and shit worked back in 1963, we're talking about wire transmissions and shit like that. And it was made from a radio telephone. What the fuck is a radio telephone? In 1963, they had radio telephones in cars? What? This is embarrassing. This is fucking stupid. Miriam Smith's dispatch was the first of many reports. Photographers Robert Jackson and Tom Dillard, riding in the car in the motorcade, heard 3 shots. The Dallas Morning News reporter Mary Woodward described hearing 3 shots as she stood in front of the school book depository. Right, but this is all information that you gather. Again, the report would be the president has been shot. Details are to come. We don't know. Even if you think you heard 3 shots while you're in the motorcade, of course, you're in the motorcade and you hear this. Amongst all the noise and hoopla and everything going on, you distinctly hear 3 shots. Bullshit. In 8 seconds. 2 of the shots had to be within 2 seconds. Let's just be realistic here. This has nothing to do with me. This is just, common reporting. This is what makes sense. you're not going to release specifics, details and shit like that until it's given the all clear. In most circumstances, obviously. In those weird things like 9/11 and JFK conspiracy, it doesn't work that way. There has been some controversy regarding the number of shots fired during the assassination. The Warren Commission concluded that 3 shots were fired. The vast majority of witnesses claimed to have heard 3 shots, but there are some witnesses who could recall only hearing 1 or 2 shots. Nobody heard more than that, though. A few witnesses thought there were 4 or more shots. Okay. Of the 178 witnesses whose evidence was compiled by the White House Select Committee on Assassinations, HSCA, 132 reported hearing exactly 3 shots. 17 recalled hearing 2. 7 said they heard 2 or 3. A total of 6 people said they heard 4, and 9 said they were not sure how many shots they heard. Another 7 people said they heard 1, 5, 6, or 8 shots. There is the acoustic evidence that was done in like the late 70s or 80s, right? Governor Connolly riding in the middle jump seat of the president's limousine in front of the president. Why? Why was he riding in the middle jump seat? Recalled hearing the first shot, which he immediately recognized as a rifle shot. Of course he did. Like, we're talking about a presidential parade. There was so many things happening in that situation. And then when you break it all down, when you look at all the breakdown videos about, the fact that these windows were open and that there was nobody in them, the book depository and whatnot, the failures on so many levels, the fact that the cars were pulled back, all these different things. Like, it's all just, it all points to Johnson. It all points to Israel. It's all right there. On the surface, it's the Johnson, it's the good old boys. But when you look at who the good old boys were and who funded all the organizations, it points to Israel. And then you look at Jacob Rubenstein, who killed the patsy. Because he just felt so strongly about the president, and he wanted to show that Jewish people weren't weak. And like, what kind of weird shit is this? Like, it's fucking crazy, right? He said he immediately feared an assassination attempt and turned to his right to look back to see the president. He looked over his right shoulder but did not catch the president out of the corner of his eye. So he said he began to turn back to look to his left, and he felt a forceful impact to his back. He stated to the Warren Commission, I immediately, when I was hit, said, oh, no, no, no. And then I said, my God, they are going to kill us. He looked down and saw that his chest was covered with blood, and he thought he had been fatally shot. Then he heard the third and final shot, which sprayed blood and brain tissue all over them. Right. He's this aware. Oh my gosh, I've been shot. Oh, hark, is that another shot I hear? That sounds like a rifle, a bolt-action rifle, being shot from the book depository. Sixth floor. I recall thinking that immediately once the shots hit me. I was like, man, I bet the guy who shot me's name is like Lee Schmarvy Schmoswald. How close was that? Nellie Connolly said she heard the first shot and saw President Kennedy with his hands at his neck, reacting to what she later realized was his neck wound. After the first shot, she heard her husband yell, oh, no, 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 and turned to his right, away from her. Then she heard a second shot, which hit her husband. She saw him recoil away from her and saw that he was hit. Well, that's not what was said. She immediately reached over to pull him toward her into her arms and lay backwards. Then she heard the third and final shot. Mrs. Connolly said she never looked back into the back seat of the car after her husband was shot. But she's saying her husband was hit by the second bullet. According to the single bullet theory, one shot passed through Kennedy's neck and caused all of Governor Connolly's wounds. He was wounded in the chest, right wrist, and left thigh. And one of the shots must have missed the limousine entirely. The Connollys never accepted the theory. While they agreed with the Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald acted alone, they insisted that all three shots struck occupants in the limousine. So the government is lying. Oh, please show it. Diagram of the bullet's path. Through his neck. Missed all those bones and shit. Went right out the tracheotomy hole. President Kennedy's death certificate places the bullet wound to Kennedy's back at about the third thoracic vertebrae. The death certificate was signed by Dr. George Buckley, the president's personal physician. As interpreted by the White House Select Committee on Assassinations Forensic Pathology Panel, the autopsy photos and autopsy x-ray show a bullet hole in the first thoracic vertebrae. The bullet hole in the shirt worn by Kennedy and the bullet hole in the suit jacket worn by Kennedy both show bullet holes between 5 and 6 inches below the top of Kennedy's collar. Well, that's way low. So what, did he have his jacket pulled up over his head like Beavis? In fact, Oswald was CIA. And he was never killed. It was all just a staged event. You can literally see the chief guy, the guy in the white suit, the white hat, the tall guy, who's seen in the picture going like this. You can see him make a slight hand gesture to wave Rubenstein in. Jack Rubenstein in. Jakob Rubenstein. These did not necessarily correspond with the bullet wounds, since Kennedy was struck in the arm, raised in the air, and multiple photos of the president during the motorcade show that his jacket was bunched in the rear below his collar. On February 19th, 2007, the film shot by George Jeffries was released. In 2007, 43 years later, the film was finally released, and we think it's totally accurate. What? This 8mm film, which was taken approximately 90 seconds before the shooting, clearly shows that the President Kennedy's suit coat was bunched up around the neckline around the time of the assassination. His suit coat was bunched up. What? The theory of the single bullet places a bullet wound, as shown in the autopsy photos and x-rays, at the first thoracic vertebrae of the vertebral column. Vertebral column. The official autopsy report of the President, Warren Exhibit CE 386, described the back wound as being oval-shaped, 6 by 4 millimeters, and located above the upper border of the scapula, shoulder blade, at the location 14 centimeters from the tip of the right acromyon process and 14 centimeters below the right mastoid process, the bony prominence behind the ear. Okay. The report concluded, the report reported contusion, bruise, of the apex top tip of the right lung in the region where it rises above the clavicle, and noted that although the apex of the right lung and the parietal pleural membrane over it had been bruised, they were not penetrated. The report noted that the thoracic cavity was not penetrated. Okay. The concluding page of the Bethesda autopsy report states, the other missile, referring to the body-penetrating bullet, why would they call it a missile, entered the right superior posterior thorax above the scapula and traversed the soft tissues of the suprascapular and the supraclavicular clavicular portions of the base of the right side of the neck. The missile produced contusions of the right apical parietal, I don't fucking know, pleura, and the apical portion of the right upper lobe of the lung. The missile contused the strap muscles of the right side of the neck, damaged the trachea, and made its exit through the anterior surface of the neck. The conclusion of bullet entry specifically at the first thoracic vertebrae was made in a 1979 report on the Kennedy assassination by the House Special Committee, the HSCA Forensic Pathology Panel, which created Figure 24 for their report to demonstrate this entrance location. This position was consistent with the back wound location in Figure 4 of their report, a drawing made from one of the still unreleased autopsy photos. Still unreleased, because Trump said he was going to release them, but nah. It is also consistent with the unofficial versions of this photo available on the internet. The HSCA examined these photographs and x-rays before rendering its opinions as to the bullet entry and exit locations, and obtained testimony from autopsy physicians that these were correct photographs and x-rays taken during the autopsy. Croft photo taken at about shortly before the first bullet strike shows the president's jacket significantly bunched just before he is hit, because that's legitimate. The importance of how low or high the bullet struck the president in the back is a matter of possible geometry. Oh. The Seibert O'Neill FBI autopsy report, original, made by two FBI agents, Special Agents J.W. Seibert and Francis X. O'Neill, present at the autopsy, preserves genuine confusion among the medical doctors present during the autopsy caused by apparent lack of an exit wound, which was cleared up later in the official report after new and more complete information became available. The exit had been hidden by a tracheotomy incision. They just happened to... So the people that put the tracheotomy in didn't notice that there was a fucking bullet hole right there? Right where they put the tracheotomy? This report does note that the doctor, Commander Humes, at the time said that he was unable to locate an outlet for the wound in Kennedy's shoulder, not his back. At the time of the autopsy, toward the end of the procedure, initial probing of the shoulder wound suggested the bullet entered the base of Kennedy's neck at a 45 to 60 degree angle. At least 2 shell casings were found near the window at the southeast corner side of the Texas School Book Depository. What do you mean at least 2? Why do we know exactly how many it was? On the 6th floor, and with the fact that movement was seen in the same corner window from bystanders below just previous to when the cars arrived, and also because of the proximity of the initial investigations, shell casing evidence collected to that of the nearest window. I mean, it's just fucking stupid. Yeah, we saw some movement in the window before the thing. Yep, we did. That's what they told us to. I mean, that's what we saw. We did. A window that was said by some to have been partially opened at the moment of all of the shots, all leading the Warren Commission to focus solely on this location in their investigation as the source of the gunfire, and so decided to have a team of surveyors measure the angles from that said window to the locations of the street, which would roughly correspond to the locations of Kennedy seated in his limousine. See, as a forensic pathologist, the thing is, so I learned this from Dr. Judy Wood, right? Who is a forensic engineer, who is probably the best, has the best take on 9/11. She said, as a forensic engineer, she doesn't want to talk to anybody. She doesn't want anybody's opinion. She doesn't want anybody's information. She wants to show up to the place and see what the evidence tells her. She says if you go into it with any sort of conclusion, then that's what you're trying to prove, is you're trying to prove your conclusion. And when trying to prove your conclusion, you ignore certain things that disprove your conclusion. Oh, yeah. 2 of them. That's right. That's right. Thank you. Have a great day. Kennedy seated in a limousine when seen in the Zapruder film riding along Elm Street at frames 210 and 225. During so, it was found that the downward angle from the horizontal was 21.57 degrees at frame 210 and 20.18 degrees at frame 225. The street sloped 3.15 degrees away from the depository building. Oh yeah, anyway, but Dr. Judy Wood said, Dr. Judy Wood said, you let the evidence tell you what it is. So for all these investigators to be going through it and being like, all right, well, it was all in the school book depository. Now let's prove that that's what happened. That's bullshit. That's not how investigations are done. That would have made it sloped away from the this would have made the angle through the president between 17 and 18.5 degrees, assuming that Kennedy was sitting upright in his seat. The commission concluded that this angle was consistent with the bullet making that observed pass through the president's upper body and striking Governor Connolly in the right armpit. Again, this is all shit you have to believe and was given to us by members of the group. Like, I'd love to know how many members were AIPAC members, Warren Commission members were AIPAC members. Or if not AIPAC, it's precursor. Oh, it hurts to stand, it hurts to sit. No fucking idea. The weight of bullet CE-399 was reported in the Warren Commission as 158.6 grains, or 10.28 grams. It was found that the weight of a single unfired bullet ranged from 159.8 to 161.5 grains, with an average weight of 160.844 grains. The lead fragments retrieved from Connolly's wound in the wrist, there were no more fragments in his chest, weighed about 2 grains, 130 milligrams. Dr. Robert Shaw described the wound on Connolly's back as a small wound of entrance, roughly elliptical in shape, and approximately 1.5 centimeters in its longest diameter in the right posterior shoulder, which is medial to the fold of the axilla. The bullet entered just at the edge of the scapula and followed the 5th rib, shattering the last 10 centimeters of the rib before exiting on the right side of his chest, just below his right nipple. According to the theory, the bullet then went through the governor's jacket cuff about 5 centimeters from the end, the shirt's French cuff about 1.5 centimeters from the end, struck and shattered his radius, leaving many dark fibers and small fragments of metal in the wound, and exited on the palm side of his wrist above the cuff. Did it bounced through his body? Like, how is that possible? There was a hole about 0.5 centimeters from the end of his jacket sleeve, and a hole through the back of the doubled French cuff, but no exit hole on the palm side. According to the theory, the bullet emerged from the palm side of the wrist and entered the left thigh. This bullet is thought to be CE399, which was later recovered from Parkland Hospital after it was heard falling onto a hallway floor as a hospital employee adjusted one of 2 patient stretchers, partially obscuring his maneuvers as he performed his routine. Using ballistics, CE399 was matched to the rifle found at the Texas School Book Depository, to the exclusion of all other rifles. The theorized path of the bullet. I mean, it's hard to see it from the top. Like, it's from the top doesn't do it justice. You got to see it from the side, because from the side it goes like in, down, up, and then back through. I'm not going to read all the rest of this. This is just too much. Discovery Channel, Newton's activation analysis, neutron activation analysis of bullet fragments. Neutron activation analysis. Whether the NNA data can be used to actually exclude the possibility that there were fragments from more than 2 bullets in the wound, and the car has been a subject of controversy. Ken Ron, J., of the University of Rhode Island, a chemist and meteorologist who has a long-standing interest in the Kennedy assassination, maintains that the NNA data excludes a 3-bullet hit and proves the single bullet theory actually occurred. Another J. His analysis was published in 2004, co-authored by Larry Stradouvian. Damn, the criticisms is what I need to read real quick. Damn, it's fucking long. That's what she said. HSCA concurred with the Warren Commission's single bullet theory. The figure illustrates how the oblong bullet in Connolly's back was indicative of a bullet which had been tumbling after striking an intervening object. That is so fucking stupid. Critics of the single bullet theory state that this is not possible, that it is not possible that a single bullet could cause the number of wounds it did and still remain nearly intact. Some critics state that discrediting the theory would suggest the involvement of two shooters. Of course it would. Jakob Rubinstein, you mean, not Jack Ruby. Jakob Rubinstein. Don't discount who's involved here. Critics of the single bullet thesis question not only the bullet's trajectory and relative lack of damage, but also the question of timing of hits to both the president and Connolly. A single bullet would have passed through both men in less than 1/100th of a second, which means that the strike of both men by a single bullet would have happened too quickly to be caught on more than one single Zapruder frame. These were exposed at 1/18th second intervals. From the Zapruder film, one can see Kennedy with his hand in front of his chest near his throat as he emerges from behind the sign at Zapruder frame 225. According to one popular version of the single bullet theory, promoted by Gerald Posner in his book Case Closed. Gerald Posner this guy. Oh, he was raised... Posner was born in San Francisco, California, the only child of Jerry and Gloria Posner. His father was Jewish, and his mother was Catholic. Posner was raised Catholic, because that's how that works. When the relationship is a Jew and a Catholic, the Catholic is the one that prevails in that narrative, right? Go figure. It's another one. Do you know how, we're talking about 2 to 3% of the American population and 0.183% of the world's population. Do you understand the math, the likelihood that every single time I look, it just, oh, there's another one. Every single person involved in this. Mi scusa. They're everywhere. And why would this guy's, who the fuck is this guy? Why is his theory on things the one that's being quoted here in Wikipedia? His book is called Case Closed. The interval between frame 223 and 224 is the time the same projectile passes through both Kennedy and Connolly's body. It is not obvious at this point, frame 224, whether Connolly has or has not been hit. However, Connolly, but not other limousine occupants, is newly blurred in frame 224, but not in frame 223. He's blurred. He said he was hit by the second shot. It is not obvious at this point, frame 224, whether Connolly is newly blurred. Connolly himself, in analyzing the frame-by-frame Zapruder film, identified his own hit later on at about Zapruder frame 230, whereas Kennedy is certainly hit about Zapruder frame 224. So he must be lying then, fucking Connolly. A third of a second earlier. Beginning immediately after 224, Connolly rapidly raises and lowers both arms, then turns to his right toward the Zapruder camera, but it is not clear that he is turning to see what has happened to Kennedy. Connolly's cheeks then puff out and his mouth opens. Many suggest that he is the one beginning to show the shock of the bullets. that he is beginning to show the shock of the bullets. Others suggest that Conley is doing exactly what he said he did in reaction to hearing the first bullet. uh, he said he realized the assassination was unfolding, so he turned to see the president. It is at this point some critics of the single bullet theory believe Conley is actually hit by a second and separate bullet, and this is also what Conley himself believed, but only on the suspicion that the first shot he heard was the one that struck the president. If the first shot missed the president, then Conley's memory of being hit later corresponds with the single bullet theory. Yeah, but according to the Warren Commission, it doesn't really matter which bullet Conley was hit by. It wasn't necessary to conclude which bullet Conley was hit by. That is fucking insane, you guys. Like, the whole thing hinges on this piece, and the commission assigned to figure it out was like, yeah, that piece isn't important. Proponents of the single bullet thesis argue that Conley is simply exhibiting a delayed pain reaction to having been hit by the same bullet that hit Kennedy a third of a second earlier. Some critics believe the puffing out of Conley's cheeks is simply physics at work, as the bullet collapses one of his lungs, forcing air into his mouth. Other critics believe that the puffing of Conley's cheeks, resulting from him shouting, "No, no, 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 no," which his wife Nellie said he shouted after the first shot, but before the second shot. The premise that a collapsed lung would cause Conley's cheeks to puff out is dismissed by Michael Baden, chief forensic pathologist for the HSCA. When the lung is punctured, as Conley's was, the air in the lung goes out into the chest cavity, not out of the mouth, so Conley's cheeks puffing out would not have been caused by air trying to escape. When an enhanced copy of the Zapruder film was released in 1998, many felt the delayed reaction theory was debunked. Others, particularly Posner, noted that Conley's right lapel flips up at frame 224. It hides the right part of his white collar in frame 224, which is far more clearly seen in both frames 223 and 225. In this same frame, as noted above, Conley suddenly becomes blurred with regard to the rest of the automobile. That's weird. Conley is clear in frame 223. Frame 224 is precisely the best positive frame of impact of the bullet to Kennedy, who is still behind the sign at this point. Zapruder himself does not appear to jump until frame 227, blurring all contents of the automobile. Conley's immediate reaction after frame 224, including a flinch in which he flexes both elbows and brings his hat up, is seen by some as unconscious reaction to the strike. Single frames of this reaction appear to show Conley unharmed, with hat held up in front of his chest, while Kennedy behind him has already clearly been hit. Others see this as Conley's reaction to the sound of the first shot. Immediately after the arm spasm, Conley begins a motion which drops his right shoulder and holds his right arm pinned to his right side, including a slow rolling motion toward this side. Man, we sure do have a lot of detailed analysis on Conley. He also is seen to look over his right shoulder at Kennedy and shows an expression of pain only after turning his head back towards Zapruder's position around 275. In the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, Stone goes to great lengths to debunk the single bullet theory, although some discrepancies exist between the narrative and the historical record. One example is when he shows Conley seated directly in front of Kennedy at the same height. In fact, Conley was seated in a jump seat, the edge of which was 3 inches inboard and possibly 4 inches lower than Kennedy, which would all have been easily proven had there been access to the vehicle. The House Select Committee concluded that Connolly could have been as much as 6 inches, 15 centimeters to the left of Kennedy. Moreover, Stone has Connolly looking straight ahead. However, when Connolly emerges from behind the freeway sign at Zapruder frames 222-223, he is clearly rotated significantly to his right. These points are of critical importance in asserting whether the bullet that passed through Kennedy could have caused Connolly's injuries. Computer recreations showing accurate body positioning of the two men show that their injuries, if caused at Zapruder frame 224, fall on a line which emanates from a circle enclosing several windows on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository and includes the window of the sniper's nest. But it also includes more. Connolly continued to hold his hat after the single bullet struck and broke his right wrist. Critics contend that this is not physically possible. However, in the Zapruder film, Connolly continues to clutch the hat even after Kennedy's head wound. This being a point generally agreed to be after Connolly has already been hit. In fact, Connolly's wife, Nellie Connolly, stated that he held onto his hat until he was put onto a stretcher at Parkland Hospital. Thus, it is reasonably clear that Connolly continued to hold the hat after being hit. Doesn't make any sense. Wrist fracture would not preclude ability to hold a light object such as a hat, and Connolly's nerve damage was limited to a superficial branch of the radial nerve, which served a sensory function only, and would not have interfered with his grip strength, nor was Connolly's hand function in any way permanently harmed. A further criticism of the single bullet theory has to do with the apparent trajectory of the single bullet. Perhaps the most outspoken critic of the single bullet theory has been pathologist Dr. Cyril Rech, who, as a member of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, wrote a dissenting opinion in which he explained why, in his view, the left to right trajectory from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository through Kennedy's neck could not possibly intersect with Connolly's right armpit. Rech notes that in the photographs it appears that Connolly is seated in the middle of the jump seat and Kennedy is to the right side of his seat, with his arm resting on the top of the limousine. According to the analysis done by the HSCA, the horizontal angle from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository to the limousine at frame 190 or so was about 13 degrees right to left. The vertical angle was about 21 degrees downward from the horizontal plane and 18 degrees relative the car, which was going down at a 3-degree slope. It's amazing how this official page has spelling errors. If Connolly was seated in the middle of the seat, the bullet should have struck him in the left of his spine. The HSCA concluded the thigh wound was made by a bullet traveling much slower than one would expect the bullet have been after exiting Kennedy's neck. The single bullet theory holds that the bullet which struck Connolly's thigh had also passed through his wrist, slowing it down in the process. Connolly said that he never felt this thigh wound at any time until the next day. On the other hand, Dr. Shires, who operated on Connolly's thigh wound, thought that the wound to the thigh, which he said extended to the region of the femur, could have been made by a bullet traveling at high speed, striking the thigh on an angle. And he didn't know. He didn't feel it till the next day. The HSCA concluded that Connolly was not seated in the middle of the seat, but was about 7-8 inches to the left of that position. And NASA engineer Thomas Canning provided an analysis of the photograph taken by Hugh Betzner from the rear of the limousine a moment prior to the first shot. According to Betzner, he took the picture and began winding his camera to take another when the first shot sounded. It has been determined that Betzner's photograph was simultaneous with Zapruder frame 186. Canning could not see Connolly's shoulder in Betzner's photograph and concluded that this meant that the shoulder was obscured by the person standing in front of Betzner. This, he said, put the shoulder well to the left of Kennedy's midline, putting his right armpit in line with the right to left path through the neck. The analysis and conclusion of Canning depends on the correctness of the assumption that Connolly's shoulder would have been visible if the man in front of Betzner was not there. The photo taken by James Elkins from a similar angle earlier on Houston Street would seem to indicate that Connolly's shoulder was below the line of sight. Some critics have questioned the circumstances surrounding the bullet's discovery at Parkland Hospital. Some critics? Shouldn't all of them? In a 1966 interview with author Josiah Thompson, one of the men who found the bullet, Parkland Personnel Director O.P. Wright, O.P., what's up, O.P., cast doubt on whether the bullet subsequently entered into evidence as CA-399 was the same bullet he held in his hand that day. Wright told Thompson that the bullet they found was point-nosed, whereas CA-399 was round-nosed. Well, that makes a big difference. In 1964, both Wright and Darrell Tomlinson, a maintenance employee at Parkland who passed the bullet along to Wright, were shown the bullet and said the bullet in evidence appeared to be the same one as the bullet found on the stretcher, though neither could positively identify the bullet as the same one. Appeared to be the same bullet as found on the stretcher, but they couldn't positively identify it. According to Kennedy's Secret Service agent Paul E. Landis, when the presidential limousine was taken to Parkland Hospital, he noticed that there was a bullet lodged in the seat behind where Kennedy had been sitting. He took this bullet and left it on Kennedy's stretcher. He said that he believes this was the same bullet which was said to have been discovered on Connolly's gurney, and which, according to the single bullet theory, had struck Connolly and then fallen out of his body. Oh, just the way it's reported is so stupid. Anyway, that's it. If you believe that shit, man, you probably think Israel is the good guy. Anyway, go get your free download, www.the-bilderberg-group.com. It's free. All we ask is that you share it with somebody. You click download, it'll ask you how much you want to pay. Just click 0 or donate. We appreciate it. Go watch Hollywoodism. Hollywoodism explains this better than anything else. You'll only understand if you watch it. But go watch Hollywoodism. The link is in the description. Unless it doesn't let me add the link like it sometimes does. Doesn't. So you would then have to wait until it uploads or go look at a previous video. But go check it out. Go, hey! Happy birthday. And then there's going to be 3 videos to the 3 of the music videos on Facebook. Go like, share, and sub those. Like, share, and sub this. If you think the Kennedy assassination is bullshit, like, share, and sub this. Yeah. We'll celebrate later. All right. Have yourself a great day, and most importantly, hi, baby girl. Whoa, are you riding your big girl bike? Wow, that's awesome. You should put shoes on. It'd be a lot easier. Yeah, your brother has on shoes. You should put shoes on too. It'll make it easier to ride your bike. You got your big boy bike too? Awesome. You guys look like such big kids. Anyway, have yourself a great day. Pedos, kill yourself.